In this series, Herd Strategies President Denise Hurd connects with industry leaders and community members to discuss the challenges they face within their fields. Join us bi-weekly to learn all about how they see us.
Well, hello there, and happy International Women's Day. Welcome back to another episode of How They See Us. My name is Denise Hurd, and if you're tuning in for the first time, thank you so much for joining us. If you are a returning listener, thank you for your continuous support. For those of you that don't know, How They See Us is a series where we invite industry leaders to discuss how they navigate public perceptions within their fields. In today's episode, we're going to switch things up a bit and we're going to go in house and we're going to have our first Women's History Month conversation. And I'm excited about today's guest because, as a woman owned business, in talking to my team, they thought that it was very important that I talk about my work and the opportunities and the challenges that I have faced as a female entrepreneur. And so at first, we thought, yeah, I could sit here and talk about some of the obstacles I've had to overcome, some of the things that people have said to me or about me, and all that kind of stuff. But then we decided, maybe it would be helpful if I brought in a guest that was very special to me to share some perspective. Because during the month, yes, we do talk about the accomplishments of women and that bear the obstacles women have overcome. But a lot of times we don't spend time talking or spending or highlighting the men that stand shoulder to shoulder with them and often provide that support that many times you don't see. So I thought that it would be really wonderful, and my team agreed to bring in my partner in crime, the yin to my yang, the peanut butter to my jelly, the coffee to my cream, Mr. Chris Johnson. So, hey, Chris.
Hi, Miss Heard. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. Very
Good.
fine today.
Good. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate you taking time to join this episode of How They See Us and just have this conversation.
Yeah, no problem.
So, I guess what I want to talk to you about, first of all, is that, you and I were raised in a generation where women did more at home. Both of us saw our mothers working in the home. While both of our mothers did work, my mother was a teacher, your mother worked in corporate America, you know, they did do more at home. And now we're seeing women do less at home, and some of those traditional roles in a household they've shifted,
Right,
and you've
absolutely.
witnessed that shift, and even we've experienced that shift together as you've had to watch me work, rise early, lay down late to do whatever. And so I would really love to hear your perspective of the changing dynamics of women and men in the household and in the family.
Yeah, it's odd that you speak of that because during our generation, I would say, my mom, she worked for, I'd say maybe about 10, 15 years or less. But I remember the majority of her time was, spent in the household. And
Mhm.
I think that's pretty much what my father required back then was that, take care of my kids, take care of the things around the house. His role was, the protector and also the one that attended to the outside of the house. I think anything internally was, pretty much a woman's role. You
Mhm.
know, but nowadays that traditional way is pretty much gone to the wayside. It's like this generation said, I guess you can say there's an adjustment. You got women that are in the workplace now that are moving in different directions and reaching their goals. Uh, they don't have to somewhat be at home and bore kids and stay in the house and cook and clean all day. That's not what it is anymore. Things have changed. I would say my father was an entrepreneur, but my mother was glad to be at home.
Right.
She had fun with it. But I think now as years go by, I don't know if she really had any regrets. But I think right now, women, in terms of the way they think now, they're not going to stand by and let dreams go by them. They're
Mhm.
just going to address the dreams and try to fit, you know, uh, fit the role of a
Mhm.
wife, of a mate,
Mhm.
the best way they know how. But if you don't have some balance, um, it can be rough. I mean,
Right, right.
we've been down that road before. Uh,
Who, us? What?
yeah, we've been down that road. So, I see your work hours. Uh, I'm I'm the cook. Of course. I
And I'm
mean,
grateful for it too.
but with her working like she does, I mean, 4:30 in the morning, up, go work out, come back home. You know, Before she hits the shower, she's working. She gets out of the shower, comes right in, goes right in, get the coffee, keep moving. About time, I'd say literally about 9 o'clock, she's asleep. She's out of it. There's a balance. There's not a lot of time to, kick your feet up and watch a movie together. I miss out on those times quite a bit, but I do understand her schedule. Um, it comes to a point where I'm integrated in her schedule now,
Right.
where you have to find time. But I understand, the basis of her work. Is it challenging? Yeah, it is. I mean,
But
to have to see her navigate, and I was like, hey, I got something I want to talk about, but hey, I got a meeting to go to.
but
It's balance.
But you talked about the changing dynamics and how the roles have shifted, and we're seeing, women doing more. Right now, according to the National Association of Women Business Owners, there are like 12.3 million women business owners in the United States. And women contribute or generated about 1.8 trillion in revenue. So there's a powerful energy and powerful work being done by women business owners. And in fact, last year, there were about 1,800 new businesses that were
Mhm.
birthed last year by
Right.
women. So
Absolutely.
those are extraordinary numbers, and not easy. And like I said, the dynamics are changing. But I would love for you to kind of talk about things that you've witnessed, being with a woman entrepreneur, and, some of the opportunities and even obstacles, because, you and I do talk a lot about the business, about, some of my experiences. And that is a role reversal, if you will, that, having women have to talk about these things with their mates. And so I would love for you to talk about like where you go to seek support for me when I am going through challenges with the business.
Well, I mean, we talk so much, at home about what to look for and what forecasts, some of the forecasts that needs to play out, or really sit down and think of different strategies. I think we talk about a lot of times, from a DEI perspective, from an HR perspective, and in terms of really putting your business back in place. I just think we have those brainstorm conversations every day.
Mhm.
I think when we walk throughout the house, so it's kind of healthy, but we both are totally different in our own way, because when I need to tune out, when I'm done working, I'm done working. I just want to revert back to just a commonplace. Whereas you tend to don't know how to turn the switch off,
Mhm.
and to me that I wouldn't say creates an unhealthy environment, but I do have to cut her off half the time to tell her I'm tired of talking business.
Mhm.
But when you're an entrepreneur, as a woman business owner, you kind of got to put 10 toes down. You got to keep pressing forward and really keep that light on all the time.
Mhm.
I mean, there's so many pitfalls out here in terms of business, just not only as a male or female, let alone, saying a female, you're going to run into some issues, clients,
Mhm.
things of sorts that maybe me as a man probably would handle differently. But over the past, 3 years, I would say, uh, I've had to be a patient of Joe. I've just had to have that patience. Uh, but at the same time, I've seen how she has to navigate and be patient even with clients. When I see a difference in, hey, how to make a decision or how to assess that client, or, something that looks, politically not correct to me.
Mhm.
But, in her streamline of business, uh, you don't sit on one side of the fence. You kind of sit in,
Sit in the
like
middle.
middle,
Yeah.
and
And sit in the middle.
yeah, because we had a talk about
We
that
did,
before.
which actually brings me to a question that I did
Right.
want to ask you, because we were talking about this earlier. I would love to know, like, what lessons have you learned, or what have you learned being with a female entrepreneur? Because I am quite confident that a female entrepreneur has not been the type of woman I think you ever thought you would be with. Because I think that in looking at our relationship, I feel as though I have pushed you out of your comfort zone
Right.
with respect to how I operate and how I live my life and what I do. And
Well,
so I would love to know, like, as a man, because we all have to bend and yield. And so I would love to know, like, what lessons have you learned since we've been
men
together?
are wired differently. The aggressiveness, uh, the inability to to be patient. Let's start there for one. Uh, I've learned to, with you and seeing how you navigate. Uh, when we first got involved, it was almost like, hey, I run a business. Everybody can't really handle what I do
That's
because I'm
true.
constantly busy. But you just, to me, I just got so wired into just understanding what patience is, because I'm the type of person anyone will tell you. My kids will tell you my dad's not patient. They
Sure.
know I'm not patient at all. But watching you navigate, uh, it gave me a better perspective in terms of become more of an active listener
Mhm.
than one that's speaking. Because I can talk, but at the same time, and stop laughing about that. I can talk, but it allows me to see how you look at all the angles before
Right.
you make a decision.
Well, let me ask you something else. I'm going to put a hook into that question. Not only the lessons that you've learned, but lessons that you've had to learn about gender equality as you've watched me maneuver.
Well, uh, you'll be surprised, and some of the meetings that I've sat in on, I've listened to you talk. Uh, the, the male chauvinist side, it tends to come out. Some people don't know how to refrain and contain it within. They tend to express it through their body language or even through verbally.
Mhm.
Uh, and I tell anyone that when I've seen you at work and having to be in a meeting with predominantly males, uh, it could be a very uncomfortable place if I was a female.
Mhm.
But you tend to pretty much hold your own.
Thank
I
you.
just think it's very, uh, I just think as time goes on, uh, women are beginning to gain more ground, from what I see.
Mhm.
Just coming back to Indianapolis and start looking at that paradigm shift of how women entrepreneurs are expounding, here in this city. I would say uh, they are navigating, in a lot of different lanes that
Mhm.
I wouldn't expect to see probably 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's very true, because actually, speaking of 20 years, so 20 years ago, when we look at the growth of female entrepreneurs, we have grown by 114% in the past 20 years. That is exponential growth. And
Mhm,
and it's not going to stop. It's
mhm.
going to keep going. We are going to keep forging down this path, because if you think about it, women are behind in a lot of areas.
Yeah,
You think about women's right to vote. It's only been a
right,
little over 100 years since we've been able to vote. And if
right,
you think about the Voting Rights Act of 1965,
right.
it's only been just a few years, that even Black women have had the right to vote. If you think about, the Senate bill that was enacted in the 80s, where until that bill, we as women couldn't even apply for bank loans without having a male signature
Right,
on the
absolutely.
loan application. And if we didn't have a husband, we had to ask our son, or our
Mhm,
father or uncle or cousin to sign on that loan application.
right.
So it's almost like, yes, women are working really hard, and we're blazing new trails with respect to entrepreneurship, because we have so much ground to make up.
Well, the beauty of kind of working side by side and you know listening to how you navigate with clients, I find it that women are more strategic planners. I think more so than men are.
Mm,
Um, they look at um, the scope of work in a way that I think we just go in head first. Women
That's
look
that
at
conversation about a man to put on a tie and a suit and say,
right.
"Okay, I'm going to be president."
Yeah. It reminds me of, it's like value stream mapping. It's like, here we are today. What will we look like 6 months from now? That's how women strategically kind of put things together.
Right.
Whereas, men tend to sometimes fly by the seat of their pants, hoping that the outcome would be positive. But I see that you predict certain situations that may happen. I always, look at you. I always say your nickname is Olivia Pope because, you in between PR and also a lawyer. So sometimes I think you negotiate those things in the household as well. So I won't say much on air about that one, but I don't do well with you in that realm of thinking because I can say she's a wordsmith. I wouldn't say about deflecting, but she knows how to woo a crowd and move pieces around the board. I mean, it's not checkers, it's chess with her. So that's the beauty of it. When I start talking about strategic planning, that is exactly what she does and does it well. So I think when people listen to her, they immediately pick up like, okay, it's like she thought that through, and men tend to be real quick on trying to get a result, but don't understand that that's not the end result. That is 6 months from now, that issue is going to come and revisit you. So you need to try to capture stuff, when you can. So she's good at it.
Cool. Thank you for that. Thank you. I guess one thing, I would love if you could take a moment. Take a moment. And like, what advice would you give to men what advice would you give to men? Women are much stronger. We're much more strong-willed now. We're much more vocal about how we want to be
Well,
treated, how we want to, and it's been a paradigm shift, even in our generation. Side note that
right.
our guests should know. Chris and I dated a long time ago, like in our 20s. But no, he's telling me to be cool. But I need to share that perspective because
Yeah.
we met in our 20s. And of course, like most men, he wasn't ready. And so then, I had to, he had to go and do his thing. And then we ended up together again, 30 years later or so. And so, but even in our lifetime, and the Denise that you knew then is very different from the Denise now.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I
so,
won't tell that story either.
no,
but
we're
yeah,
not going to go down
definitely.
that path. No,
Yeah.
there's a song called Back Down Memory Lane, but we're not going to
Right.
sing it
Can't
today.
find the reasons why.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. Okay. So anyway, what I was going to ask is, what advice do you have for men to maneuver this change that women are making and how they are living out their best
Well, let me
lives?
be candid about that. Whether a man verbally speaks upon it, emotionally or internally, they know there's a shift. To acknowledge it is another thing
Mhm.
because eventually it's going to come out in some facet of that man's life
Mhm.
when he's interacting with, say, someone, a female entrepreneur. Uh, but I believe, in society now, most men now recognize there is a shift that's happening. And I believe that uh, getting on board, making the adjustment, understanding, that they are a valuable asset, whether we want to say it or not. They are a valuable asset. They can take you to different places or different heights and pull things out of you that you may not know, who you were as a person. So I think it's more than just uh, sitting at home barefoot and pregnant.
Well,
That's
yes,
not
of course.
that's not the that's
No,
not the
not at
place right
all.
now anymore.
Not at all. Never
So
was. But somehow we were put into that little box. But,
right, right,
no, not at all. Not at
absolutely.
all. No. So everyone in the studio is laughing like, no, we can't be in that box. We cannot
Well,
be there. We have
Yeah,
to break out of that.
yeah,
No.
we know what you're pushing for. Empowerment. Yeah, oh
Empowerment,
my God.
absolutely. It is
Yeah,
women's,
yeah,
Women's History Month. It is
right.
all about empowerment, but it's finding a balance. It is finding a balance. And and you and I talk about that a lot,
Oh yeah.
about the balance. I often say to Chris, I'll follow you. I will follow you over a cliff, but I got questions. And I need to ask my questions. So if I can ask my questions, I'm good.
Oh, they're truly hardline questions.
Mhm.
I tend to be a wordsmith and come up with answers too, just like she does.
Right.
But you got to be patient because her schedule is quite busy. Uh, I do recognize and realize the work that she does, and I think you tend to kind of be careful of how you navigate. What you say to one another. We do tend to make time,
Yeah.
and when it's getting overwhelming, it's time to leave, and hey, we're going somewhere on vacation or whatnot. And it happens that way sometimes because she can be overwhelmed with all the work that comes her way. So when like I said before, when I met her, I told them I didn't know what she did for a living. I'll just be honest, guys. I didn't know what she did for a living. And to be honest, I didn't even care. No, I really actually didn't even care. So now that I do know, it can be a little bit much. Yeah.
So, what do you think men need to do in order to be more supportive of women? Because, like I said, it is Women's History Month, and it is a time where we are highlighting the contributions of women and we're celebrating women. But we we need you, like we need men to support us, and so if you could yield or provide a piece of advice to men in the community, what should men do or be doing to support the women in their world?
I think some of the tasks or things that go on in the old traditional ways, sometimes you got to change roles. Uh, it doesn't hurt to maybe get in, cook, clean, or whatever the case may be when she's having a busy day. And I get that. Uh, there is a balance. I mean, when I look at it, everyone brings something to the table. Uh, it doesn't matter, hey, if you're working 50, 60 hours a week, I got to offset that by something, and that is if sometimes I enjoy cooking, but, or if I got to take care of errands, certain things that I'm going to do without you telling me to do it. I think even having encouraging conversations with one another and asking, hey, what's going on with that client? Hey, how's your day been going? At work. Those are things, you bounce back off of each other that you tend to say, hey, I'm not walking around the house not paying attention. I see you. I see you too. But you got to find time just to, inquire about each other's headspace. Uh, Trust me, it can be overwhelming if you
Mhm.
don't ask that question.
Mhm.
I've seen it several times at home.
Mhm.
Several times, when I get snapped at, but I understand.
Who, me?
Oh,
Snap?
yeah.
I,
Cuckoo for Cocoa
I think
Puffs.
that's my alter ego. I don't know that girl. I don't know
Yeah.
that girl.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else you'd like to add to this conversation? I really appreciate you joining me today. I
You're all
truly
right,
do.
Herb. You're all
You're
right.
all right too, Mr. Johnson.
Have you heard?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
else you want to add?
No, not at all. I think men need to, understand, open up their minds to, this new change that's right before them. It's not going to stop. They afforded the opportunity. Give it to them just like men have been given opportunities. So
Mhm.
I think just seeing you blossom over the past 3 or 4 years, I think it's a good thing. Uh, it let me kind of reach back and identify some areas that I come up short on,
Mhm.
that I need to work on. So I
Mhm.
think all in all, I think we all can learn from one another.
Absolutely.
But I can say it's been a journey. It's
It is,
worth it. It's worth
being
it.
with a female entrepreneur is a journey because you have to think about it for years. She probably had this idea, one day I'm going to have a business, one day I want to start a business, one day I want to start a
Right.
business. And being an entrepreneur is one of the loneliest positions you can ever have in life because no one understands what it is that you do. and no one quite understands why you have certain worries that you have, and no one understands like what keeps you up at night, because
Yeah.
it's a lived
Well, I
experience.
lived through it. I mean, my dad,
That's right.
owned a business, and we've seen a lot of days and a lot of nights like that. Uh, Great man, hard shoes to fill.
Hmm.
I'll tell anybody that he's, self-made,
Hmm.
and if I could, do it all over again, I'd try to walk in his path, in his shoes. It's just because he sacrificed. I mean, a great deal,
Right.
to get all of us through college. There was a lot of sleepless nights,
Hmm.
and I think as an entrepreneur, uh, I think you carry that badge, and it's something that you don't have time really to schedule when you're going to wake up. You just get up if it's a new idea, or if you say, "Hey, by the way, I got to keep moving the business forward." It's really no going back.
Hmm.
When you start your own, it's no going back. I've seen it with my dad. It was like we don't have any other way to go
Right.
but forward.
That's very true. That was something I was talking about earlier today with someone that, a lot of people may know or may not know that Herd Strategies isn't my first venture.
Right.
I had a venture previously, and I've talked about that, where I was in business with a business partner, and then we ended up shuttering that business
Right.
after 3 years, and that's when Herd Strategies was launched. And so, and I remember when we were shuttering that business, I kept thinking, I can't go back. I have to only go forward. And so, it's really important that for women and women entrepreneurs is that we put good men around us. That is very, very important. And I think sometimes that's very hard, because it is a balancing act. Fortunately for us, we are a little further along in life, and so
Right.
some things that we probably would have experienced together decades ago, we kind of were on different paths, and so now we've come together, and those obstacles we
Right.
don't have to climb, we don't have
Mhm.
to climb over together,
Right.
which is good, but there are still obstacles.
But what's
But
crazy about this is that when a person starts a business, and I think we all know this, you can put one foot forward. It's trying to get that other one over.
right,
And
right,
there's almost
right,
like there's
right,
almost like
right.
80-90% of people that you'll sit around with, have conversations about, hey, I want to start my business, I want to do X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
It's something that got to go on internally in you. I don't know, that fire or someone that peed you off
Mhm.
to just say, I'm not going back.
Mhm.
Because that's saying that, hey, if you try and you fail, get back up, dust yourself off,
Mhm.
do it again. That to me, in terms of business,
Mhm.
if you put the first foot forward, you
Mhm.
learn something in every scope of work
Right,
you do,
right.
but you're definitely not going back to revisit that same mistake again.
No, it's not. No, you're
No,
not. But it's
that
that you're right. And actually, another great man that gave me some great advice about my business is my father. I remember one day I was talking to my dad, and I was really, really struggling. I mean, I was struggling, and I was crying. And he sat there and said to me, "Well, Denise, if it's this hard, maybe you need to just give up and go back to work." And those tears rolled back up in my, and my dad. So and and so, and he said it from a place of caring. And he didn't mean any malice or anything bad by it. But, here I was, his child, struggling and in tears. And I just looked at him, like him, and I said, "No, Daddy, it doesn't work that way." I was like, every entrepreneur that, they didn't start off being a millionaire. And I started just running down the names of all these entrepreneurs that I admire, and knowing that they too had gone
right,
through difficult
right,
days. So I
right,
remember that conversation he and I
absolutely.
had.
Yeah, I guess with my dad, it was almost like when I played sports. He said to me, "I'm not coming to your game if you're sitting on the bench." And I said, "Wow."
Hmm.
So his expectations were already
Hi.
duly noted. And
Right.
it's like,
Right.
hey, this is what I expect out of you,
Mhm.
and you excel at what you do.
Mhm.
And I'm always a believer of that. So what he was doing to you was, hey, I'm gonna draw something out of you to make sure you don't come back and go right back down this road.
Right.
But it forces you now to say,
Right.
okay, stay hungry. You gotta
Right.
stay hungry.
Right. And interestingly, he was the one that made me start the business in the first place.
Right.
Once again, great advice from a man. I had, transitioned out of my former employer. And when I told him what had happened, he just took a deep breath and said, "You may as well just start your own business. You've been doing it for everyone so long, you may as well go out and do it for yourself and see if you can make a go of it." So I'm really appreciative of the men in my world that have been so supportive through the years, as an entrepreneur, because I don't know if I would be here without you. And I think that all men need to do, and I appreciate you for embracing the change in the dynamic of our relationship
Well,
and the roles, because it's a household.
well, life
And
is about encouraging. I
right.
mean, uh, you don't want to have energy around you that's not encouraging.
Right.
Um, it's like everyone has great ideas of what should happen or what they think should be happening, but really don't have a lot of skin in the game.
Right.
Yeah,
True.
your opinion, yeah, duly noted,
Mhm.
but you want to have conversation, good
Mhm.
dialogue about how do you inspire me? How do I get to the next level?
Mhm.
Encourage me,
Mhm.
and you need that energy around. I've seen so many people have their own opinions, and it really be literally about them. It
Right.
ain't about you. But when you see you moving along, you're doing great things.
Mhm.
Hey, jump on this wagon. Come on, man. I'll take you for a ride.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that. But don't come in here and kill my dreams.
Right. Right.
Don't be discouraging to people. And I think that's all most people really want out of life is for somebody to say, hey, I'm doing okay.
Mhm.
Some positive things, So, I always try to put that, food for thought, each and every day when she has things to talk about. Sometimes it can be a little much, but she needs to get it out.
Mhm.
And she got a lot of information to get out, by the way, guys. But she can talk. And while I'm trying to watch ESPN, she's just talking. But you got to be a listener. That's all I'm
Mhm.
saying. Be a listener and be encouraging. That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
Right. Well, I want to thank you
No
for
problem.
joining me today.
No
I really,
problem.
really appreciate you, Christopher, for having this conversation. It's
Yes.
very important because, like I said, it is Women's History Month,
Right.
and it's International Women's Day, but it's very important that we recognize and we celebrate the men also that stand
Right.
behind us and encourage us and push us to be our very best,
Yeah,
and so I
absolutely.
appreciate you, taking time out to have this conversation.
All right, Herb.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you're all right
Appreciate you.
too. Appreciate you
Mhm.
too. So, thank you so much for listening to this episode of How They See Us. And I encourage you to share this with a friend, and follow us on all of our social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And
Oh, wow. One more thing. It's happy hours at Herd Strategies.
what? Okay, we're gone now. Thank you all very much. Tune in in a couple of weeks for our next episode. We have a wonderful guest scheduled. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day.